Hey everyone, I hope you are doing well. I am not, because I just discovered that I may be related to multiple war criminals throughout history. So I'm feeling a bit weird here. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about Percy Jackson, specifically the original 5 books. This is a children's series written by Rick Riordan that came out in the mid to late 2000s. It became a huge success, and the series continues on to this day, sort of branching out of just Percy's story, with sequel series, The Heroes of Olympus and The Trials of Apollo, also being quite popular. And Riordan shows no signs of slowing down, as we are getting 2 new releases next year, a new standalone set within the universe, as well as the official 6th Percy Jackson book, which is a bit weird, but yeah, we're gonna get to all of this. So I kind of want to talk about my personal experience with this series, because it means a lot to me, and also how I felt rereading it after so many years. I'm sure most of you know what Percy Jackson is about, but for those who don't, it follows Percy Jackson, a young boy who is the demigod son of Poseidon. He attends Camp Half-Blood, a summer camp designed to protect the sons and daughters of gods, as well as to prepare them for the rough life they're about to be in for. Because the Greek gods being real also comes with all of the ancient Greek monsters and villains being real, and they hate demigods and they want to kill them all. The original series follows Percy and his friends Annabeth, the daughter of Athena, and Grover, a satyr, as they go on magical quests, run into a bunch of goofy monsters, have some fun battles, and attempt to stop the Titans from returning and destroying the world. I was 10 years old when I first read Percy Jackson. I believe it was the summer before I was in the 6th grade. I think that's the same age that Percy is in the original first book, The Lightning Thief, and I think that is important because this book really spoke to me back then. Not only did it blow me away with how cool I thought its story and world were, but I also greatly identified with a lot of its characters, and I think that's something that Riordan pretty much nailed. He's very good at writing great children characters. Characters who, they're kids, they're stupid and all, but they have a lot of depth to them, they have a lot of personal issues. I mean, all of the demigods really have dealt with, hardships their entire life. And while, the children readers may not have experienced the same type of things that the demigods have, most kids have their own problems they're dealing with, and I think Rick really channeled that energy into these characters, allowing all sorts of types of kids to see themselves in them. And it's not just with the life experience these characters go through, but a lot of them are, just different. I mean, Percy himself, he has learning disabilities. There's a lot of different characters with all sorts of different backgrounds. Kids will find a character to latch onto and really connect with, and that's one of the things I really appreciated about this series back then and still do. Now, the first 2 books, The Lightning Thief and Sea of Monsters, follow a similar style where you have Percy, Grover, and Annabeth on a quest, and they run into a bunch of different monsters along the way, different villains. They have to overcome them, and then there's, this overarching plot that ties together at the end. And I immensely enjoyed these books as a kid. They were fun, fast-paced adventures. But once the Titan's Curse comes around, things start to get a bit different. This is a bit of a turning point for the series, where, it was having some fun, goofy adventures up to this point. They had been planting the seeds for something a bit more sinister going on. And yeah, book 3 is when things really start to ramp up and they start setting the stages for the finale. And this was a pretty big deal when I was younger, because this is when they started to kill characters. This is when you realized, wait a minute, are people not safe? They always jokingly talked about how demigod kids are getting killed all the time. I didn't think it would actually happen, though. So things kept getting more intense. I remember plowing through the Battle of the Labyrinth. I read that book so quickly the first time. And then the day finally came where The Last Olympian was released. And man, this was my Avengers Endgame when I was a child, let me tell you. I had never been more excited for a book. I don't know if I have been since, and I absolutely devoured it, and it was glorious. A huge, epic finale, had everything I wanted, set up even more books for the future. I was absolutely in my glee. I was also very excited at the time due to the news that Chris Columbus, the man who brought Harry Potter to the screen, which of course at this point was, on top of the world, was going to be adapting The Lightning Thief to screen. Oh, buddy. The Lightning Thief movie was traumatizing. I can't think of a better word for it. I was young, I was innocent at this point. I'd watch a movie like Holes, and I'll be like, man, books to movies are awesome. They can do no wrong. So yeah, that was a rough spot. But I continued to be a big fan of the series and continued to be an avid Riordan reader. Bought The Red Pyramid the day it came out. Bought The Lost Hero the day it came out, and I continued up. I think Throne of Fire and Son of Neptune were the last ones I actually read when they came out, because at that point I was getting a bit older. I was sort of growing out of it, or convincing myself that I was growing out of it. So I sort of just fell out of it. So this brings us to the past year. My friends and I had started a book club, and we had all been super into Percy Jackson when we were kids. Some of them fell off earlier than I did. Some of them, continued reading through the Heroes of Olympus. But we were all really interested in revisiting the series. Not only because we wanted to see, if it still held up, but also due to the, sort of reinvigorated hype the series had been getting since the announcement that Rick Riordan himself was developing a series for Disney Plus based on Percy Jackson. Whew! That was big and exciting news, not just for fans of the series, but for the people like me who were there opening night for the Chris Columbus film. Vindication, man. At least I hope so. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Anyway, yeah, so we sort of marathoned the entire series. We spent 2 weeks reading each book, and I was pleased to discover that not only do these books hold up extremely well, but now being an adult, looking at it through a different lens, I ended up coming away with a newfound appreciation for these books. I've already talked about how great I think Riordan did at, just connecting with kids and presenting them with, relatable characters and putting them into a really fun, dangerous, and exciting world. The Lightning Thief is a great introduction. There's a ton of mystery and confusion at the start that really hooks the young readers. It gets off to a quick start as to not lose the interest of kids, which is, a big thing children's authors have to keep in mind. But after it hooks you, these series really allow time to, build up characters. They have quieter moments where characters can just talk. We can learn more about them. It's fast-paced enough that you never lose interest, but at the same time, it knows not to be too fast-paced. I love how Camp Half-Blood is sort of just this safe haven for all of the kids where they can feel at home. And these sections of the books really serve to, build out the world and story and to learn more. And then it's not long before more action starts. Now, I actually found that the quest portions of these books, mostly when they're just hopping around like a Monster of the Week type deal where they're always running into a new monster, have to find a way to defeat it. It's a solid formula, and I think it does work well for the children audience who, are always looking for more exciting action. And I do think Riordan does a great job incorporating Greek mythology into this world into a way that's digestible for, general audiences and kids. But reading it now, I feel like these are the parts that have sort of aged the worst. I started to feel a bit of fatigue going through the motions of just the same formula over and over in The Lightning Thief, but it didn't overstay its welcome. It's a very short book. But I think The Sea of Monsters is where things really started to drag. This was easily my least favorite of the books. And while I do overall like the whole Greek mythology thing, there are certain things about it that are a bit sillier, a bit more goofy, meant to be, funny jokes and stuff. But I don't know if they meshed particularly well. I remember they tried to explain how fast food chains expand so rapidly through Greek mythology. I think stuff like that is a little bit silly and sort of breaks the immersion. I also think in general, there might have been certain things that you didn't need to tie into Greek mythology. Like the fact that fan favorite Nico D'Angelo is canonically Hitler's brother. There's a lot of things like this where it'll probably fly over your head as a kid, but reading it now, I can't help but overanalyze certain things, and I'm like, what the is going on here? But yeah, overall, I do think these books are fun and enjoyable. I particularly think the ending of The Lightning Thief is actually fantastic. It's clear that Rick had a vision for this series from the start, and planting those first seeds, that first twist at the very end of The Lightning Thief, even reading it as an adult, knowing what was going to happen, it was fire, man. And yeah, I think that the third and fourth books, with them becoming darker, really pick up the story, really become a lot more interesting. We meet a lot more characters, we get to dive more into the characters we already know, and I think he just really did a good job fleshing out a lot of these more one-note characters. The god Dionysus is the director of Camp Half-Blood, and he was sort of a one-note asshole throughout the first two books, but in book 3, we really start to learn more about him, why he is the way he is. I thought he was a great character, and also characters like Clarice, who was like the bully character, you know, she hates everyone. But even characters like her get a lot more development, and we start to understand them a lot more. Then The Last Olympian happens. This book is unironically incredible. Like, I gave this a 5 stars, and I truly mean that. This is like as perfect as a conclusion can get. And it was kind of insane. Right from the start of this book, you know Rick means business. This is the climactic finale, and the whole book feels like it. Pretty much everything that has been building up the entire series at this point gets an incredible payoff and leads to just an insanely thrilling conclusion. A lot of character arcs end in extremely satisfying ways, and there are a ton of crowd-pleasing moments. Again, you know, this is still a book written for children. It's not like going to be as complex or in-depth as, you know, more adult fantasy. But I think for what it is, it was pretty much the best thing they could have possibly done. And yeah, so I'm very glad I reread this series to experience it all again. And while I think it's like a must-read for kids who are into fantasy, I honestly think it's still worth checking out as an adult, even if you did not grow up with this series. They're all pretty short, it's a nice fun read, and yeah, it's pretty wonderful. Now, of course, things continued on. You know, at the end of The Last Olympian, we get a pretty big setup for the, you know, the following series, The Heroes of Olympus, which we are continuing on with in book club. We've only read The Lost Hero so far, and I did enjoy this book quite a bit. I do think it had still some problems with, you know, like the quests, a bit overstaying their welcome, started to get a bit bloated, the Monster of the Week type thing. But yeah, it seems to be setting up another exciting saga, so I will be updating you guys when we eventually do get to the end of that one. We also started the King Chronicles. I have a video coming out where I'll talk a bit more about it, but it was no Percy Jackson, let me tell you, so we have dropped that from the book club. I'll probably still continue with it at some point to see how it goes, but Anyway, wow, is it a good time to be a Percy Jackson fan? Let me tell you. I am often very envious of kids today who grow up with so much content available to them. Like, I thought I was lucky becoming a Percy Jackson fan right when the final book was coming out. Kids becoming fans of Percy Jackson now and in the future are going to have 3 full series and more to read, and the show. So yeah, Percy Jackson is currently being turned into a live-action series for Disney+. Rick Riordan, like, infamously hates the movies, and, you know, honestly, fine. They're pretty terrible. So he has, like, his fingers all over this adaptation, and that's something that gives me a lot of hope. But, you know, someone being a good author doesn't always translate to, you know, a good screenwriter, so I am glad that they do have other talented folks involved. His name is escaping me, but the guy who directed the Muppets movie and the Dora movie, like, those are bangers, okay? Him being one of the directors makes me very confident. We've also been introduced to the cast. We have a new trio here playing Percy, Annabeth, and Grover. I've seen that, like, stupid Ryan Reynolds time travel movie that has the kid playing Percy in it. Movie was alright. Kid was great, though. I think he will do fantastic as Percy, and the rest of the cast seems wonderful as well. They seem to be going a book per season approach, which would, you know, makes perfect sense. As you know, in the original series, Percy does get a year older with each book, and if this turns out good, which I really hope it does, I have a lot of faith in it. I'll always be a bit anxious until I watch the first episode, but if it is, I imagine it'll be a pretty massive hit. I always used to say, like, ever since I was a kid, I'm like, man, if Chris Columbus had actually pulled this off back in the day, this would have been Harry Potter. This would have been as big as Harry Potter. Maybe not, like, quite as big, but, you know, I mean, as far as books go, you know, Percy Jackson, mega popular, but it had the potential to be so much more if they had actually knocked those movies out of the park. They did not, and I really think and really hope that this show could do it. Anyway, that'll do it for this video. You can leave your thoughts on the Percy Jackson, anything about it, in the comments down below. Did you grow up with it? Are you a more recent fan? What's up? Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.